Now we've seen the if statement in action to pass comment on the result of a checked equation, but we can also use the if statement to effectively hide and mask error messages. The syntax is exactly the same. Equals if, open brackets, condition or criteria to be met, comma, what to do if it's true, comma, what to do if the condition is not met, so it's false. Now, two very common error messages that we can effectively trap and deal with are divo and num. If we go to the divo sheet here in our error messages working file, you'll find we have a simple formula, which is B1 divided by C1. And quite happily, we can place a value in B1 and a value in C1, and the result appears in A1. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. 30 divided by 6 is 5. If, however, we delete these two values, we get a fairly common error message, which is div-o. You cannot divide by 0. The answer is actually infinity, and in the early days of computing, you would have been able to crash a program by trying to get it to divide by 0. Obviously, Excel has evolved a little and can spot this straight away and doesn't even attempt it. Now, what we are causing a problem here is dividing by 0. So if I were to put a 5 into there, we find we get a 0, even though there's nothing to divide into. It quite happily carries out and we get 0. So the problem here is caused by C1. If C1 is 0, then we get the divo issue. So what we could do is revisit our formula here and replace the statement with an if. So we ask if, open brackets, C1 equals 0 effectively becomes our criteria. So C1 has got a 0 in it, then we're not even going to attempt the divide and therefore create a divo error message. We're actually just going to return a result of a little hyphen, comma, and then the false part is, well, let's go ahead and do the divide. So you can see we're slightly different in our if this time, in that we're not passing any comments on the result. We're checking this cell here. If it's 0, then we're going to place a hyphen. If it's not 0, then we'll actually go ahead and do the B1 divided by C1 and return, and you can see we get a little hyphen because there's 0 in C1. But if we then place some values in, what about 60 and 12, and the result is 5. So here we've used the if statement to check for a potential error and then effectively negate that error by returning something more user-friendly. Now with our next sheet, num, this is another error message that we can capture and trap. What we have here is A1, which is the result of B1 to the power of C1. And currently we have 2 and 16 in there, which gives us our 65,536. If, however, we delete the 16, you see that we get 1. So that's 2 to the power of nothing. So effectively an empty cell is 0, is 1. In fact, anything to the power of 0 is 1. But if we delete the 2, we get our error message. Our Excel error message says #num. So effectively what we're trying to do, we cannot do without an actual number. So this time we're going to edit the formula slightly. And we're going to say equals if, open brackets, so the same as before. This time our logical test is whether B1 is greater than or equal to 0, comma. If it is, then we can actually go ahead and do the B1 to the power of C1. However, comma, false. So if B1 doesn't contain a value greater than or equal to 0, then we'll write our little hyphen out again. You can actually put an empty value in the cell by just doing an open and a close speech mark. The only issue I have there is when you look at the cell, you think that there's nothing in it and you could delete the formula. So by producing something in the cell, even as simple as a little hyphen, at least you know there is something going on in that cell. Just one little change there is that the B1 must be greater than 0. There must be a value in B1. Return, and we get our little hyphen because there's nothing in B1. Place a number in there, such as 6, and the result is always 1 when you have a number to the power of 0. But then we could do 3 for cubed, and 6 cubed is 216, 6 squared is 36. So we're using the if in both of these cases with #num and divo to effectively catch the error ourselves and then produce our own message rather than using Excel's default messages, which all begin with a hash. So #divo, #num. And as you progress, you'll see that we can capture other error messages to effectively negate #na, #error, #value. But you'd need to know what's causing the error so that you can catch it with your if statement.